Avery, whose show is this? And we're live. Welcome, everybody, here to the Lakers Lounge Podcast. I'm Anthony Irwin, Senior Lakers Insider for Clutch Points. And today on the show, I'm going to react a little bit to the basketball we've been watching since the Lakers were eliminated and ask a question. And honestly, I want this to be a back and forth between myself and you guys who will be checking in live. Um, I want to have a conversation about small ball. And the nice thing about the off season, obviously, I would prefer to have these conversations a little bit later into the off season, or at least not have to be thinking about the off season quite yet. But the nice thing about the off season is it does give you a chance. If the Lakers are eliminated a little early, it does give you a chance to take a look around the league and at these teams that are more successful and maybe try to identify a couple of trends here and there, and to paint a picture of what the league might look like next season, and then in some cases moving forward. And I watched the OKC Denver game last night, and we're watching this Pacers Cleveland game right now. Not much you can take from it because of how few players Cleveland has available, and Indiana's apparent disinterest in taking a chokehold of that series. But and then look, we'll get a look at my theory in one of its better examples a little bit later tonight when the Golden State Warriors and the Minnesota Timberwolves face off in their first game of the series. But I've been thinking about this a lot, and it dates back to the 2019 to 2020 season, where the Lakers that year were one of the worst three-point shooting teams in the field going into the postseason. And a lot of really, really smart people looked at that and used that as a reason for why they might get upset by some of these more voluminous three-point shooting teams that they would face that year, right? Lakers played the greatest 8 seed of all time in the Portland Trailblazers that year, and then they played the James Harden, Chris Paul, or no, it was a James Harden, Russell Westbrook Rockets. The Nuggets were a pretty big team, so they don't quite fit this description. And then Miami is always is fairly analytically inclined. That year, the Lakers were bigger, stronger, faster than teams, and they just mashed, right? They just suffocated teams, wore them down, and by the end of those series, you would see, as we saw in the finals series, Miami was just done. And at one point, the Lakers, in a finals clinching game, held a 40-point lead. And we've seen some teams win different ways since then, but I do think the NBA has, not that slowly, but certainly surely, moved in the direction of size really mattering. And now I think every team wants to be able to, throw out a big lineup and a small lineup. And that's what was absolutely killer against Minnesota, that when the Lakers went really, really small at the onset of game 5, Minnesota was able to both suffocate them with Rudy Gobert's size on the court, and then they went small, quote unquote small, with Naz Reid and Julius Randle out there, and were still bigger than the Lakers, but also more skilled and a little bit quicker. So, it has made me wonder, what do we do with the direction of small ball in the NBA? And I again want to know what you guys think about this. So We're going to have a conversation on a more macro level about small ball. I want to have a conversation again about that evolution as a possibility. And then with the Lakers specifically, I'm not positive they'll ever be a particularly good small ball team with Luka on the court, and I'll give a couple of reasons why. I want to be clear, this isn't me knocking Luka or anything like that, but I do think if you're going to be a good small ball team, there has to be lineup wide characteristics that those small ball lineups have to carry out and commit to. And I'm not positive that the Lakers would be able to do that with Luka, and certainly not with Luka and Austin. So we'll talk about that at the tail end of the show too. I also listened to LFR today. I had a ton of errands that I had to run. And I listened to them. They had their Pelinka conversation, and it really kind of dawned on me how often Rob Pelinka's moves or lack thereof tend to be an overreaction to however the previous season went. And it's put the Lakers in kind of a bind on a few occasions. And this year, the thing I'm really going to be looking for here with Rob is what kind of identity is he actually going to commit to? How does he see the sport of basketball beyond, hey, I'm going to appeal to all of the people who I need to have be in good graces with, so that I can maintain my gainful employment. So at the tail end of the show, we'll talk about that. And then obviously, as always, answer your guys' questions as they come in. So fun show, very theoretical show. This is the kind of conversation we're probably going to come back to over the course of the postseason, and then certainly with guests, because I want to pick their brains on this too. And yeah, let's go ahead and dive in. A quick reminder to those of you watching live, hit that like button, hit that share button, hit that subscribe button too. That's really helpful. If you guys are watching on Twitter, head on over to youtube.com/@LakersLounge to find the show there. If you guys are listening in the morning via podcast, please hit subscribe wherever it is that you get your pods, preferably on Odyssey because I'm a company man. And yeah, let's go ahead and dive on into this. I don't know. I find this topic interesting. I find these match grow conversations about basketball interesting. We'll see what you guys think of it too. All right. So the teams that are left playing right now, you have the Oklahoma City Thunder. They rely heavily on two centers in Chet and Hartenstein. They're playing against the Denver Nuggets, who obviously rely pretty heavily on their front court of Nikola Jokic and Aaron Gordon, who is a bigger power forward, I would say. They also play DeAndre Jordan in the year of our Lord 2025, which is insane that they can get any minutes out of him at this stage, given how washed he looked for the Lakers a couple of years ago. Their bench sucks, though, so I guess those things might go hand in hand. The Minnesota Timberwolves, we just saw the Timberwolves play with Rudy Gobert and with Naz Reid and with Julius Randle, and that front court just absolutely ate up the Lakers. And that their physicality that they brought to the table was something that the Lakers were just absolutely worn down by the end of that series. You have the Golden State Warriors, who are probably the smallest team left still playing. They start Draymond Green. Now, they do bring in Quentin Post from time to time. They play Kevon Looney. And, you know, it's still a decent center rotation. But again, they are kind of the exception that might prove the rule, but they are certainly an exception to the way that the rest of these teams are put together. The Cleveland Cavaliers, They play Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. The Indiana Pacers have a really good center in Miles Turner. And then they have some depth. Normally, they would have more depth behind him, but all of their centers got hurt over the course of the season. And then you have the New York Knicks, right? They have Karl Anthony Towns and they have Mitchell Robinson. The Boston Celtics have Kristaps Porzingis, although I don't know what his injury status is for the rest of the series. But they have Kristaps Porzingis. They have Luke Cornett. They have Al Horford. They have a guy in their rotation who, doesn't even play. And yet I wish that he was a Laker because of the way that he played against the Lakers a couple of years ago. That guy being where's his name? Xavier Tillman, who is more power forward, but certainly he's physical enough to kind of body up with centers. So those are the teams that are all left playing, and all of them outside of Golden State, they play multiple 7-footers, some version of a traditional center, and as much as a couple of years ago it looked like centers were going to be a thing of the past because of the influence of small ball and teams like the Warriors and the 7 seconds or less Suns or the James Harden Rockets and so on and so forth. We thought that, man, are we going to arrive at a point someday where the center position goes completely extinct? But now I think it's pretty clear that the center position is alive and well. And I would go so far as to say, based on the Lakers being pretty good evidence here, you cannot be a legitimate contender if you don't have one, top 10-ish center. And it's funny when you say top 10, it sounds a lot more impressive than it actually is. I'm just saying above league average center, starting center. And the Lakers this year had Jackson Hayes and Alex Len and didn't convert Koloko or Jemison, and their center rotation was pretty pitiful. And frankly, their center rotation outside of Anthony Davis the last couple of years has been pretty pitiful. And even if AD was on the team, I would have said that the Lakers needed to, and I have been saying over the last year or so, that I wanted the Lakers to go out and get a better backup center there. Because I think the notion of a deep center rotation, at least 2-3 players deep, is something that most of these teams really rely on. And again, I think basketball and playing the highest caliber basketball is always going to be this moving target. That's how sports basically are. But I think we have arrived at a place here where small ball is, I'm not going to go so far as to say like a thing of the past, but I do think it is. We are going to have to rethink the way that it is being used, or we have watched the entire league rethink the way that it is being used. And we're watching teams rely a lot more heavily on size up front, size throughout the rotation or roster, perimeter size, positional size, all of those things. We're watching this league, a copycat league. We are watching it kind of rethink and recalibrate the way that they put their rotations together. The other factor here, and I'm going to, come back to this after the break. But the other thing here to keep in mind is the difference between postseason and regular season basketball. In the regular season, when it's an 82 game season and teams are not as physical on a night by night basis, I think you can get away with small ball lineups, eating a bunch of innings, and keeping your centers fresh for when the games start to matter a little bit more. And this is going to be something, Callie agrees. This is going to be something that I think is going to be a staple of basketball from here on out. In how and baseball is already like this, how essentially postseason baseball regular season baseball, two completely different sports. And it's why you have a team like the Dodgers, who for so many years now have been such an incredible regular season team, and yet they only have two World Series to show for it. While they have been on this spectacular organizational run? And some of that is the difference in regular season and postseason baseball. Some of that is the inherent randomness that comes with the sport, that features guys swinging as hard as they possibly can at a moving object. Um, I think there are other factors going on there, but I do think, pitchers throw harder in the postseason. Managers think longer and harder over their decisions in the postseason. Uh, you have better pitchers throwing harder. In the postseason compared to the regular season, you don't see the innings eating pitchers out there basically at all in the postseason, unless there's some kind of a disaster with your starting pitcher. Uh, and as a result, runs are harder to come by, home runs are harder to come by, and some teams basically have to completely rethink the way that they play. Um, in basketball, I think we're seeing the same thing, where you get to the postseason, referees are calling less stuff, especially off of the ball. It's a much more physical game. The defense is a lot more attentive to the details of the other team's game plan. You have, you have the windows of opportunity to knock down open shots are significantly lower in the postseason, and that messes with guys' timing. And you're looking at a completely different sport for those teams that are looking for 16 wins versus those teams that are trying to survive an 82 game season. And I think with what the Lakers kind of ran into was, certainly after the Luka trade, they were rolling with a rotation that I think is very much the kind of rotation that will get you through 82 games. You'll win most of your games with that kind of rotation, but there were very key elements of a postseason rotation that the Lakers were completely lacking in. And we saw how that series played out against a team that is built more for the postseason than it is built for an 82 game slog. So I think that's a big factor here. And now it begs the question, especially as teams are now kind of hard capped under the second apron, um, begs the question, how do you accomplish both? Building a team that has the kind of innings eaters that you need to get through an 82 game season, and then also have a playoff rotation that can maximize in those opportunities. That's a very difficult thing for GMs to do now that dollars are harder to come by, and good players, I think, are harder to come by in this new CBA. It's a big balancing act that I think the Lakers, are going to have to figure out a way to rebalance in this upcoming off season. So, um, yeah, that's going to be interesting to watch how the Lakers handle that, and I think in many ways it's going to define what kind of off season and what they are capable of going into next actual season. For the Lakers also specifically here, I want to ask the question, and again, I'm gonna work off of you guys. Let's see. Vicinity saying small ball is not good. LOL. Centers like Zubats are what's in now. JK Lobos, Pelinka needs to pull another scam trade on another friend. It was funny. Did you guys see I'm sure you guys did, but the the voting results for executive of the year are in. I'm going to try to throw this up on the up on the screen here for you guys so you can see it too. But pretty clear that executives didn't carry the Lakers landing Luka Doncic in particularly high regard. here is the results here. Sam Presti wins executive of the year. He finishes with 10 first place votes. He kind of runs away with it. 6 second place votes, 6 third place votes. You have Colby Ottman come in second. You have Trajan Langdon come in third. Raphael Stone comes in fourth. Lawrence Frank came in fifth. And then Rob is finally in there at sixth. He was the guy who landed Luka. And I would figure that would go a little further in these guys' minds. But clearly it didn't. So I don't really know what to do with that, but I think what I'm landing on is that executives, remember, executive of the year, that is an award that is voted on by executives. NBA media doesn't vote on that. Fans don't have any input on that. It is strictly NBA executives voting on that award. And oftentimes it becomes more of a popularity contest. Not to say that Sam Presti isn't deserving. He did acquire Daniel Tice at this year's trade deadline. A huge acquisition who played all of 0 minutes for them. Now, in more legitimate points here, right? He acquired Alex Caruso. He brought in Isaiah Hartenstein. He has all of the assets here basically moving forward. Callie is not happy with me complimenting Sam Presti. Sorry. But yeah, I don't know. I think Callie, nope, not Callie, Presti has an opportunity or had an opportunity here with a roster that clearly can win a championship. He could have basically lapped the competition, gone out and brought in Cam Johnson or any number of players, given the type of assets he's working with. He could have consolidated this rotation that I think is probably even too deep for a postseason. Too many innings eaters on that OKC roster. He could have done any number of things, but decided not to. And if the Thunder don't win at all, or even funnier, don't even beat the Nuggets in this series, that award looks a little funny in the light. But regardless, we knew that Rob was never actually had a chance at winning that award. And by the way, the fact that Rob in the previous in the offseason leading up to the season, if he does a little bit of work before this regular season was underway, maybe he is taken more seriously as a candidate for executive of the year. And the fact that Rob didn't put in that work before the season, that went a long way in deciding the way that the Lakers season would eventually go. So it's a nuanced subject, this idea of the who should get most credit here compared to their peers and all of that. But at the end of the day, Rob never being considered for any executive of the award, executive of the year award at any point in his career to this point, despite acquiring LeBron, AD, and Luka, winning a championship, making it to a Western Conference Finals. It shows some bitterness, I think, from the guys who are actually voting on this award. And also B, it shows how poorly the margins have gone, that he doesn't have more to show for LeBron and AD, and a first round exit here in embarrassing fashion with the beginning of the Luka LeBron era. And we'll see what he's actually able to squeeze out of the Luka LeBron era, and then eventually how well he manages the Luka Doncic era in Lakers foreign blue and gold. So yeah, it's a funny thing the way all of that played out. That was a giant ass detour. Let's get back on track. So, can the Lakers play small with Luka? I think if we're going to answer this question, we have to start out by listing kind of the keys to successful small ball lineups, right? First and foremost, effective practical spacing, where the opposing defense gets spaced out because you have 5 guys on the court who are all legitimate deep threats. And ideally, right, in the nth degree version of small ball, the best small ball team and lineup of all time, that death lineup that the Golden State Warriors had with Steph and Clay and KD and Iggy and Draymond, all of those guys could feasibly knock down the occasional 3-point shot at least. And then you had 3 fire alarm shooters in Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and Kevin Durant, where if those guys are open, the defense had to close out to them like their hair is on fire. And you know, you look at the Lakers, right? The type of small ball lineups that they've played. You've had a guy like Vanderbilt out there who teams just don't have to care about shooting the basketball. LeBron's an okay catch and shoot threat. Luka's an okay catch and shoot threat. Austin this year really struggled in catch and shoot situations, especially if he was sped up just a little bit. And if those are your 3 of your better shooters there, then you aren't going to have that effective practical spacing that small ball lineups exist for. The other thing that small ball lineups have to do is make up for that lack of size with some of the highest motors in the sport. Think of Andre Iguodala. Think of Draymond Green. Think of even Klay Thompson. Those 3 guys are 3 of the better defenders at their position of their generations. And even Kevin Durant would get out there and work defensively. And Steph Curry, during that stretch, transitioned from being a pretty bad defender, somebody who teams would try to take advantage of. He became a passable defender and then probably an above average defender. And if Steph is your worst defender on the field, then you're probably going to be an okay defense. So, but the biggest thing there with all of those guys was if there was a loose ball, it was theirs. If the opposing big brought the ball below their waist, it was theirs. If a team tried to run a pick and roll, that Warriors team, they switched and they just stayed on that ball and made whatever ball handler uncomfortable that they had to, and just completely overwhelmed with pressure and with effective passing lane smothering and that defense. Everybody rightfully thinks of that Warriors team for how great they were offensively and how overwhelming they were offensively, but because that offense was so overwhelming and that defense could get back and get set as frequently as they could, you had a defense that was also overwhelming, especially with the modern principles that defense employed for its time. And you look again at a small ball lineup with Luka Doncic on it. He is never going to be a defender, even on Steph's level during that Warriors run. And then if you have Luka and Austin out there, then you're at such an athletic disadvantage when if you're going small, you need to have an overwhelming athleticism advantage. You need to have a foot speed advantage. And the Lakers, quite frankly, when they went small this year, especially against Minnesota, they were at a foot speed disadvantage. So you're smaller and slower than the team that you're trying to beat. You're not going to beat very many teams being smaller and slower. So, like, one thing that JJ Redick and the front office, they're going to have to hash out this year is, we have Luka. There are certain things that while Luka is on the court, we are not going to be able to do. And hell, we could probably extend that same thing to Austin, where there are going to be certain things that even if Luka is off the court, but Austin is on it, there are going to be certain things that the Lakers are not going to be able to do. And, um, maybe that's reason enough to trade Austin to those who feel that way. I know Pete feels fairly strongly that it might be time to trade Austin because of the athletic disadvantage that the Lakers are going to be constantly at while Luka and Austin share the court together. I don't know if I'm all the way there yet, but I'm also not going to call Pete an idiot. Like it's a smart dude. That's not a take that he's just firing off emotionally. Um, I I can see where he's coming from. So I do think that, and JJ talked about this, and actually Jovan made a great point on his show where JJ talked a lot about being in championship shape, right? Championship conditioning. And a lot of people, I think correctly, took that to be a not that thinly veiled shot at Luka. Like, look, man, no love handles next year. And I think there's something to that messaging. But Jovan made the point on his show, and I thought it was an excellent point, that this isn't just a physical conditioning thing here, that you need to be mentally conditioned to especially if the Lakers want to play small at all, you have to be mentally conditioned to never give the opposing team, even if they're bigger, an inch, because if you give a bigger team an inch, you're going to be giving up a mile. So the Lakers are going to have to, if they are going to try to stick with this JJ's, I think, preferred method of coaching, which is switching everything, playing small, spacing the floor, all of those things, and he's especially dogmatic about spacing the floor. Then that a real conversation that the front office and JJ Redick are going to have is, are you sure Luka Doncic fits into small ball as a principle? I'm not positive he does. And I'm definitely iffy as to whether Luka and Austin together fit there. And then you add to that LeBron, who, if he's playing power forward, okay, that's a he's got good foot speed for your typical power forward. But that normally means that Rui is going to be playing small forward. He's going to be at a foot speed disadvantage. So, I think something is going to have to give there, whether it's Austin, whether it's Rui, whether it's JJ relenting on some of these dogmatic principles that he brought to the table, again, especially as it pertains to spacing. Um, I I think the Lakers would probably be pretty smart to maybe not ditch small ball altogether next season, but to make it a lot more of a strikeout pitch than what we saw in the postseason, where the small ball was their 97-mile-an-hour fastball, um, that they had to throw a ton of. When in reality, you want your small ball to be your you know uh what is it, a 12-6 slider, or right now the split finger fastball is a really popular pitch for pitchers to strike guys out on. The Lakers are going to have to rethink their vision of small ball, I think, next year, because I just don't think Luka fits into it. And that, again, that's not, I'm not saying that Luka sucks or anything like that. That's not what I mean at all. But I think if you have Luka on your team and you're going to try to go small, that means you have to have, yeah, thank you, Blake. That, like, that 12-6 curve that Kershaw throws, that's how the Lakers basically have to think of their small ball. And if you're going to be effective with Luka on the court for small ball, you almost have to think of him as like a center, because you want him to be far and away the slowest person on the court, and you want everybody else to be flying around. And even then, I'm a little nervous that um it would put those Luka being out there, uh and not being as comfortable a fit in those lineups. It would require a lot of finagling, I think, and I think the Lakers would be much smarter just to yeah, like Des says here. Essentially, they were running 2 slow guards and 3 power forwards. Yeah, like that's not small ball. That's slow ball. And you can be slow if you have Anthony Davis and Dwight Howard as your front court. You could be slow if you have Jokic as your center. You can be slow with Rudy Gobert and Julius Randle, or Naz Reid uh and Julius Randle. You can't be slow with LeBron at center. It's just not a workable thing. Or Dorian Finney-Smith at center, or asking Rui Hachimura to, well, Rui should be a better rebounder anyway, but you guys get what I'm saying here. You can't be slow and small. Slow and small is death. And that's even further to the point when I think small ball is, again, not becoming a thing of the past altogether, but I certainly think it is becoming a smaller part of a lot of these successful teams' identities. I mean, shit, Chet Holmgren might not be playable in that series against Jokic. And he's pretty, I mean, he's long. He weighs as much as I do, but he's long. He's not small. He's just, everybody looks kind of small when Jokic is shoving them in lockers. But if Chet, who spaces the floor, protects the rim, is a good rim runner, sets good screens, all of that good stuff, like, this dude is built, you would think, in a lab to be an effective small ball center. And even he might be too small for Jokic. Oh my God, the Dodgers with an incredible play. Woo. Like, Chet might be too small, and he's not small. And like, you look at some of the guys that the Lakers are trying to play, and they are smaller than Chet. So I think the Lakers are going to have to bulk up in this upcoming offseason. I know Rob used the phrase a lot of, we know we have to get a big. I think they need to get multiple playable centers and surround Luka with size and athleticism and possession limiting centers who change the math on the Lakers far more to their advantage than we saw it in that Minnesota series. Let's see. Zachary Kendall, small ball can only work if you hit a ton of threes. Let's see. J.K. Lobos. So the team needs are a center, a backup center. Does the front office retain Hayes, a power forward, DFS replacement, and a point of attack defender? They need a lot, man. And the more that I kind of think about it, I don't know if the Lakers have enough assets to make good on this Luka LeBron window. They only have 1 first rounder at their disposal. They only have 1 second rounder at their disposal. They have pick swaps, but the problem with swapping picks, if you're the Lakers, is you're going to be pretty good. So some team might be like, yeah, okay, maybe we'll gamble on guys getting hurt. But the pick swaps aren't going to be all that valuable. They have a mini mid-level exception to potentially offer to guys. The more that I think about it, this isn't to say that they can't be contenders next year, but I do think we have to kind of scale back our expectations on how much work the Lakers can actually put in this upcoming offseason. And I still maintain, I've said it on a few radio hits that I've done, and I've said it on this show, and I think I'll probably continue repeating it. But Rob doesn't like going into a regular season without a first rounder at his disposal. Add to that the Lakers are going to be in the market for a superstar right after LeBron retires or departs in one way or another. And there just aren't very many avenues to stacking up the first rounders that the Lakers would likely need to go out and get Luka's superstar second best player, right? Um, and maybe Luka is going to be patient and understanding of how little the Lakers have to work with on the tail end of, like, this is where it's tough, right? On one hand, it's nice that you go directly from the LeBron AD era straight into the Luka Doncic era. And that's kind of nice. But the thing is, at the end of those eras, normally you have a grace period where you build up your draft capital. And the Lakers just aren't going to have that because Luka's there. And he's not the kind of player that you're like, you cash in talent, win now talent to go out and refill your draft stash. So the Lakers are going to have to be really really efficient, hyper efficient, and super creative as it pertains to stretching out the values of these first rounders that they can actually utilize now. And it's tough to see how the Lakers compete next year while also keeping enough powder dry for going out and getting Luka's, Robin to his Batman. So that's, we'll see how they handle that. And man, it's early and we got to see what markets look like and stuff like that. But yeah, the Lakers have a lot of work to do and not very much in terms of assets to be able to make it work. All right. I think I'm going to make this one a little shorter tonight because it's a Tuesday night and there just isn't much going on here for the Lakers. We're just waiting for this season to mercifully end. I am going to obviously break this down and it'll sit on the RSS feed and stuff like that. I'll figure out something to do with the lowdown tonight and then hopefully have some guests lined up here for the rest of the week. So until then, and until the next time you guys hear from us, I'm Anthony Irwin saying have a great rest of your day. Make somebody else's. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, hit that share button, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow.